All right, give me some coffee drinking. You scoot it over here. Pull yourself over. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
The scary thing about traumatic brain injury is that brain cells don't grow back the same way skin cells would after a scrape. So often rehabilitation means retraining the brain to do mundane tasks.
All right, ready to make the transfer now?
Using different networks and different patterns because the old ones don't exist anymore. This makes it very difficult to predict how successful these rehabilitation efforts will be, and patients often experience very different outcomes.
Powering the future, confronting the world's challenges with cutting-edge solutions, medical breakthroughs, and high-tech discoveries. These are the stories of our planet. This is VOA-Tek.
This is the story of two fighters. One, a fighter by choice, a young professional boxer with a promising career. The other became a fighter by accident. Both suffered life-altering traumatic brain injuries, or TBI, and both continue to fight for normalcy in life after their injuries. Daniel Franco was an up-and-coming boxer until 2017 when he was violently knocked out during a fight in Iowa.
During the fight, I got hit a lot. I got knocked down, and then I got back up, and I started fighting again, and I got knocked down the second time with an over right hand, which was like he ducked down and threw a punch as I was throwing a jab. So right here, I'm open. His punch landed right here. It was a subdural hematoma in my brain.
A subdural hematoma is caused by traumatic brain injury. Tiny veins in the skull tear and bleed, injuring brain tissue. It often leads to death.
After the fight, I guess I looked fine. They took me out of the ring, they put me on a stretcher, took me into the ambulance. Back to the ambulance, I started having a seizure, I was having convulsions. Once they got me to the hospital, they rushed me into the ER. I had a subdural hematoma. They stopped the bleeding, and then they hinged my skull. They hinged my skull open first to alleviate the pressure. They stopped the bleeding, and about, I think, less than an hour later, or same night, it started to bleed again. So they went in, they removed the skull. They removed a portion of it, and then they did the second surgery to stop the bleeding and put me into a medically induced coma for 10 days.
Even you're talking a lot better and smoother than you were last time I saw you, man.
No working on that also, which is good.
Stephan Spurgeon wasn't in the ring when his traumatic brain injury occurred. He was just hiking outdoors with friends. He's now 2.5 years into his recovery and is finally able to tell his story.
My friends tell me that I walked up to a vista to get a view when the ground underneath me gave way and I toppled about 100 feet down to the bottom. I suffered with what was called a diffuse TBI, or diffuse traumatic brain injury. So that means basically that the injury was spread around and covered many sections of the brain.
The traumatic injury, when somebody, such as a car accident, where they're going forward, your brain is moving kind of like jello in there, and it's called coup contre coup, so it bounces within your cranium, which is very hard. So you're not just getting one single point of injury, you're getting multiple points of injury, be it frontal, back, or even on the sides. And you can also get some shearing of the axons on the top layer of the brain. So there's a lot of multifaceted areas that you're having to work with. And for those connections that the brain has, right, as each area talks to the other areas. So it's more multifaceted looking at a brain injury. And no brain injury is like the brain injury before, because everybody's slightly different.
I was on the operating table in 45 minutes, which is good, I hear.
Very lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the cards weren't going my way, but luckily that one did. I was in a drug-induced coma for about a week, which they had to take me out of because my wrist needed operation. I shattered my right wrist, and there's like some metal in there now. So part of my recovery is also trying to get my mobility back.
Stephen's dad, Jerry Spurgeon, remembers his early recovery.
At 13 days, they had to take him out of the coma to set the arm. They took him out. He came up, no problem. He had to learn to swallow, to talk. And, I mean, I could understand him a little, but he's come a long way with that.
Yeah, traumatic brain injury is best put as any insult to the brain that alters the function of the brain. So it may be something like a on-field sports concussion where a patient is temporarily dazed and confused. By the time they come off the field and the trainer does their assessment and the team doctor does their assessment, well, they might be back to normal. They can answer all your questions and tell you what play they had. To the more severe episodes of traumatic brain injury, like a severe TBI, where they don't and won't recall days, maybe months of what happened. So, they're in a coma when they present to the healthcare system. They're in a coma for the duration of, say, 4 weeks, and then they stay in the hospital till they're medically stable to go to rehab. And it might not be till halfway through rehab that they start to remember day-to-day events, what they call post-traumatic amnesia.
It's here at Casa Colina Hospital and Centers for Healthcare in Pomona, California, where the long journey to recovery from traumatic brain injury happens.
In an outpatient neuropsychological evaluation, we do a full day of an evaluation. So we test somebody's thinking abilities in a lot of different ways, and as well as looking at the emotional problems they may have, the behavioral problems they may have. And then in the rehab world, we want to relate those problems that we see on testing to the problems that patients are going to have in their real life. So when I'm looking at testing, I want to see how they're able to use their language. But then when they're in the real world, I want to know that they can be able to go into a restaurant and order something effectively, or be able to have a conversation with their family.
I started my therapy and everything was going great. I was working on speaking. I was working on articulating my tongue the correct way. And I was slurring my words a lot. I was trying to tell everybody that, that something's wrong with me. I know what's going on. So my brain, my thoughts were clear. I was able to understand people. I knew what was going on, knew what was going on around me. But when I tried to speak, I was speaking in jumbled words, or I was slurring, and when I would try to write, it would be completely backwards. I wouldn't be able to spell anything correctly.
How frustrating was that for you?
Extremely frustrating. I had really, really bad balance when I first came here. Even still today, like my fingers are a little bit numb, my toes are a little bit numb, my whole right side is a little bit weaker, so I kind of have to work it out a little more. And when I was here, I was doing these. I was doing this to make sure I get my arms strong again, because my right hand's a lot weaker than my left. I learned how to drive again. Yeah, so I was
Driver's ed training.
Yeah, it was cool. So we had this, there was...
So you can recreate the whole driving experience in here?
Yeah.
You're cruising.
The therapy that I have is due to damage of my cerebellum. So my understanding grossly is that it kind of works as a volume knob, or to kind of regulate and smooth out things that happen in my brain, so that my body can enact. I think one of the main problems that I'm focusing on is, the damage to my cerebellum is pretty global throughout my body. But, my left side tends to be worse than my right. With my legs, it's not so bad. With my left arm, it's pretty obvious that I've got problems. I mean, that's about as still as I can be.
We want to teach them how to move properly, how to use their core, because the core does have a lot to do with the movement of the arms and the legs, right? So we are cueing them manually a lot of times and then trying to bring that off so they feel the muscles, and then the brain gets that feedback. This is what's normal. This is how I should be, not shifted to one side.
Traumatic brain injury is one of the most disabling conditions in the United States. There's plenty of people that don't know they have consequences from a traumatic brain injury and are still trying to piece things together after a motor vehicle accident, after a fall they took, and don't know why their personality is different, why they process information differently, why they can't sustain a job, why they can't sustain a relationship. And when you go back and look, it's that traumatic brain injury that never got treated that really has consequences.
So when Steve was in the hospital and things were still very uncertain, you didn't really know what options there were?
Not really. I mean, other than we needed convalescent care. I mean, for me, it was a very simple problem. The only thing that mattered is what's the next step. And I really didn't spend a lot of time figuring out what's the next year look like, because it wasn't important. The next step is all that's important.
70% of patients actually report that the things that cause them the most trouble after their brain injury are not physical challenges that they have, but it's actually their thinking problems and the changes in their behavior that both the patients themselves and their family members report as being the most distressing. So our goal is to really work on those kinds of issues and how do these things play out in the real world.
Part of Stephen's rehabilitation includes cognitive exercises on a computer. Here, he's working on navigating websites with physical therapist Melissa Brott.
So let's see, let's click on the map and see if there's something close. So just click on the, use your...
Just pick one?
Oh, you don't have to even pick one. I think you can just zoom in. But that'd be kind of cool to check out. And you're doing a good job.
I think it helps me. I do feel like one of the other aspects of my injury is that my spatial orientation is off a little, so I can't always find my way to a room I want to go to or stuff.
Yeah.
But that's getting better.
Yeah. Well, even since we practiced this before, I can tell you've been using this at home because you're a lot smoother with this.
Are your memories still a challenge? Or as you get further away from the time of the accident, are you better able to remember?
On certain things, I think so. Like someone else will tell me something that makes something click in my brain, and I'm like, oh yes, remember that. Or I'll see a photo and it'll jog a memory. I think my ability to make memories now is not hampered. I forget things from time to time, but that happened before, so, that doesn't bother me. I think, although, with the passage of time, some of the memories do get more fleshed out and more clear, you know, as I hear other people talk about events and so on.
One aspect to TBI rehabilitation is neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by creating new neural pathways. That means injured neurons are bypassed by healthy neurons and new connections are made. All this occurs with brain stimulation through activity and repetition. Physical therapist Stephanie Kaplan explains.
But there are some premises of neuroplasticity, that I think are inherent to why the robots are popular and why people are interested in them, right? So part of that is repetitions, right? And practice, right? Practice is a really important thing. We need to do the same thing with our body when we're recovering from an injury, like traumatic brain injury, to get back to where we were. We have to practice, we have to train. So it's important to get repetitions really high, which is where technology can help us, because a lot of the robots and assistive tech materials out there, and then we need that practice to happen in a variety of experiences.
Heel strike is looking better, man.
Stephan Spurgeon gets the opportunity to rehab in a high-tech robot twice a week. It's called an exoskeleton, and physical therapist Ryan Lovell suits him up.
All right, Steve, let's do this, man. Go ahead and have a seat. So far, so good?
Yeah, I think so.
And we'll stand up, recheck, and then we're good to go. Sound good?
Yeah.
3 beeps, we're going up. Okay? But you're gonna be doing most of it because I'm gonna be going from the side. Ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. And up. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. And still try to get your heel strike in, same way. I'm gonna give you some more step length so you can get it done, okay?
Yeah.
Come forward a little bit, body comes, yeah, there, right there, that's perfect. Good job, Steve. With Steve, so it's obviously patient dependent. What we're trying to do is improve his gait mechanics, which basically means that the ataxia that he has, the kind of the unadjusted or the movement that he has that's uncontrolled for him, we're trying to help him develop a little bit more control by some of the things that he talked about, which includes either restricting or encouraging certain movements based on the parameters that we've programmed into the exo. So we have a walking pattern that we've programmed into here for him, and we're trying to get him to adhere to it. Once we do that, we feel like now we start to look at things like walking speed or walking endurance, because once we've taken the mechanics to where we want them to go, then we can focus on the more functionality of the gait, which would include speed, endurance, to enable Steve to walk around the community, walk across the street in a timely manner, make a red light, things like that.
Things are getting better for one reason or another. So I think that makes sense to say this is why.
Are you impressed with the progress?
Absolutely. It is a source of some of our bigger disagreements, because the perspective difference of what it's like to actually be Steve as opposed to watch Steve. But I tell people that if you think of it as watching glaciers, pre-global warming, and even now maybe, but it is moving, it's moving. I think I probably was holding out for the big moment. There's no big moment.
Just a bunch of little ones. Steve says he's stubborn. Are you as stubborn as he is?
He says he learned it from me, so I think I'd say as stubborn, probably.
Rehabilitation is really about, education of your symptoms, confirmation of your symptoms, and then helping you compensate by using the good areas of your brain function, the good areas of your body function, to help identify areas that make you less impaired and less disabled.
Daniel Franco remembers what his therapy was like when he was learning to walk again.
So this is just able to balance yourself while you're here. And usually they would have you walk, turn left, turn right, look up.
Oh, and still
look
stay on the
down.
line.
Yeah, and so you're able to have your balance. You're able to walk properly. You're not, moving to the side. Yeah, this place, it'll always be home to me, or a piece of home.
Yeah.
Because I did spend not a great amount of time here, but very stressful, very scary times. I think like one of the happiest moments when I was here was when I was actually finished. When I was finished with my physical therapy. And you're good?
Fly.
Yeah, fly, go ahead. And that was just such a big accomplishment to me. And it felt the same as when I won my first championship belt. A very pivotal point for me was when I was able to swallow whole food again, because I had a gastronomy tube in my stomach. So I wasn't able to taste food. I never really ate food for about 2 months after the fight. And when I finally got to eat, that was like, it was so pleasing to me. It was so a little bit foreign because I haven't done it in so long. Transitioning through different levels of therapy and through different levels of my recovery, I see like night and day as to where my performance was.
But it's so rewarding to see people get back and be able to feel like, I'm gonna be okay. This might be my new normal. It's not what it was, but I'm gonna have my life back.
What is one thing that you wish people knew about traumatic brain injury that you don't think we're aware of?
It's hard for me to concentrate for a long period of time. Sometimes I do get a little angry, but I don't think it pops up as much as I think it would. So I really don't get angry too much, but I don't know, it does affect your mood sometimes, but I'm a very happy go-getter person, and so I really don't let it get me down. If I do feel a little bit down in the dumps or a little sad, I'll just change my train of thought, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm alive. Awesome. Everything's great. I'm here. Little swag right there. But
Lean forward and stand. I'm just going to guide you. There you go. Whoops. Come forward. Come forward. There you go. Bring your butt in. Remember, they always have to take. You're so much taller than me now.
How do you define that new sense of you're doing good?
I think in that case, you can kind of begin to compare yourself to someone else, but it hasn't become clear to me what that new normal is, As far as I'm concerned, this is just like the worst job I ever had, And sometimes I get paid and sometimes not. I have to deal with that. But I'm hesitant to use the word new normal because, it's still changing, Not clear to me what the new normal is.
Or what it will be.
Right. Hopefully it will be something much greater than this. That's the plan.